When players talk about legendary weapons, they usually think about how much damage they do in a fight. But the Legion artifacts go far beyond numbers on a tooltip. Each one carries a history of catastrophic feats, events that scarred continents, reshaped societies, or even broke worlds. In this video, we'll be ranking the Legion artifacts not by how cool they look or by how strong they were in-game, but by what lore tells us they've actually done. And at number 10, we have the Eldrachi Warblades. These Warblades are the last surviving legacy of the people who were, for a brief time, the single most effective resistance the Burning Legion had ever encountered. The Eldrachi were a militant, honor-bound species from a world now erased. When the Legion arrived, they did not collapse or scatter. They organized. They fought the demons to a standstill, deploying tactics and martial discipline unlike anything Sargeras' forces had seen. This was no minor skirmish. It lasted long enough that Sargeras himself came to their world, not to annihilate them outright, but to see if he could recruit them as his personal bodyguards. The lore records that he even let his avatar fight them for days without ending the battle, treating the struggle as a test. That alone is quite remarkable. Few mortals have even touched a Titan's avatar, let alone endured it for days. And then Toronar the Indomitable, leader of the Eldrachi, achieved something unprecedented. He actually wounded the avatar. The moment Toronar drew real blood, Sargeras ended the test. In an instant, he reduced the Eldrachi to dust and ordered the planet torched, a punitive act for daring to injure his manifestation. In the aftermath, Sargeras collected the Warblades of the strongest Eldrachi warriors. Most he gave as trophies to his most powerful generals, but Toronar's own weapon he kept in reserve for a special occasion, a silent acknowledgement of their singular status. Out of all of the artifacts once wielded by mortals, these blades belonged to the best of the best. The only warriors ever to earn the Titan's respect, specifically for their combat prowess. Measured against the rest of this list, the Eldrachi Warblades represent the peak of mortal prowess rather than the cosmic, reality-breaking power that some of the others have. They can't flood continents or tear worlds apart, but their history marks them as the deadliest edge of mortal resistance, an honor that earns them the 10th spot before we climb into weapons that alter the fabric of reality itself. And this video is brought to you by Manta Sleep. I've actually been a fan of their masks for a while. I already had one of their pro masks in my stash before they even reached out. I like to collect different kinds of sleep masks, so when Manta Sleep sent me their cool mask to try out, I was pretty excited. The cool mask has little cooling bead inserts that you pop into the freezer for about 20 minutes, and then slide right onto the mask. From there, it's instant relief. Your face stays comfortably cool without any of the dripping, freezer burn, or uneven cold spots you get from gel packs. Personally, I really like the gentle weight it puts on your eyes. It gives the nice relaxing pressure that feels soothing but never uncomfortable. And it doesn't get hot halfway through the night. The cool mask is especially great if you deal with migraines or headaches. The cold eye cups help ease the pressure without needing to reach for meds or ice packs. What I love about Manta Sleep overall is that they make their masks super adjustable and comfortable. You can tell they're designed for people who actually care about sleep, not just another cheap accessory. And that's kind of the point. They're building what they call a pro-nap movement, which is all about giving people the tools to rest better, recharge, and take control of their sleep. So if you want to try it out for yourself, check out Manta Sleep through the link below, and use my code ROMARED for a great discount. And at number 9, we have Apocalypse. This is not a weapon designed for dueling or even for single target slaughter. It's a catalyst for turning life into undeath at scale. Every time it strikes down a foe, that corpse doesn't simply fall inert. It becomes fuel for an army. In the hands of an unholy Death Knight, Apocalypse calls forth swarms of ghouls and skeletal warriors from the remains of the fallen. In a prolonged campaign, this becomes a compounding advantage. Each enemy slain becomes another soldier fighting for the wielder, accelerating the collapse of opposing forces until whole battlefields are under undead control. The destruction it could cause could nearly be directly correlated to Frostmourne. In theory, given enough time and victims, a wielder of Apocalypse could methodically convert every living creature on Azeroth into undead thralls, not through a single apocalyptic spell, but through relentless, exponential recruitment. This is a slower but arguably more terrifying path to annihilation than a one-time explosion. Even at smaller scales, its effects reshapes war. An army with Apocalypse could invade a city, lose half its troops, and emerge even stronger, swelling its ranks with the defenders it just killed, similar to what the Frostmourne did. That potential, rather than flashy, world-breaking feats, is what earns Apocalypse its place at number 9. Because a weapon that can, over time, transform a planet's entire population into an army is an extinction-level threat even without a single catastrophic spell. And at number 8, we have the Scythe of Elune. At first glance, the Scythe of Elune appears to be a spiritual artifact, a link between druidic nature magic and the moon's power. But its most famous feat wasn't healing force or channeling celestial light. It was the creation of the Worgen Curse, a magical infection that reshapes mortals into feral wolf beasts bound to Elune's power. Unlike a single destructive blast, a curse spreads. It jumps from host to host, bypassing fortifications and armor. It destabilizes entire societies, not through direct destruction, but through mass transformation. The Worgen outbreak in Gilneas was only a limited manifestation. Even that small-scale event overwhelmed cities, fractured governments, and produced a permanent cultural scar. Now imagine this same curse seeded intentionally across multiple nations at once. Armies would lose discipline overnight. Civilians would become feral attackers. Borders would collapse under waves of uncontrolled, supernaturally strong creatures. In the right hands, this artifact could trigger apocalyptic levels of chaos. It weaponizes nature's ferocity and the moon's magic into a contagious, civilization-level threat. And because the curse binds its victims to Elune's power, it could, in theory, be harnessed or directed, turning entire populations into unwilling shock troops. That places it above Apocalypse in our ranking. Where the Death Knight's blade slowly built an army from corpses, the Scythe of Elune could instantly transform living armies into something else entirely, destabilizing continents before a war even begins. And at number 7, we have Ulthalesh, the Deadwind Harvester. Ulthalesh is one of the few artifacts on this list with a feat clearly written into Azeroth's geography. This scythe was crafted as a conduit for an affliction magic on a scale far beyond mortal sorcery. Sargeras gifted it to the sorcerer Satiel, and with it she drained life from a once lush region, leaving behind the barren, haunted Deadwing Pass we know today. That act was not an accident or a slow blight. It was a single, decisive unleashing of power that stripped an entire landscape of vitality, plants, animals, people, and even the ambient magic currents that support life. This kind of magic is not just about killing. It empties. It takes what was there and leaves only a husk. The scar has endured for millennia without healing, which tells us the effect is not simply damage, but a lasting alteration of the world's life force. In other words, Ulthalesh doesn't merely destroy, it rewrites the state of an area into permanent desolation. Scale that up and the implications are dire. If a single wielder could drain Deadwing Pass, multiple uses or an empowered casting could depopulate entire continents, leaving wastelands where civilizations once stood. Even at smaller ranges, it is an ideal terror weapon, striking not armies, but the very land they rely on. Compared to the Scythe of Elune's chaos or Apocalypse's gradual conversion, Ulthalesh operates with surgical, region-level annihilation, and a scar that lingers indefinitely. The combination of immediate devastation and permanent ruin earns it the 7th spot on this list. And at number 6, we have the Fist of Ra-Den. These fists are less a weapon in the traditional sense and more a Titan caliber conduit for elemental energy. Ra-Den himself, a keeper created by the Titans directly, wielded it to shape life and command storms. With it, he split the skies, unleashing lightning powerful enough to topple armies, and, most impressively, granted life to the Mogu. That last feat alone places it beyond mortal magic. Creating a race is a creative act on par with Titan engineering, not just a powerful spell. It demonstrates that the Fist is not a simple channel for lightning, but a bridge to raw forces of creation. On the destructive scale, the same storms could devastate fleets, tear apart cities, or erase whole regions with unending thunder. A single wielder could command weather on a continental scale, disrupting agriculture, transport, and defense systems long before direct strikes. Where Ulthalesh leaves land lifeless, the Fist of Ra-Den could render it uninhabitable with endless storms, or conversely create new life in its aftermath. That duality, cataclysm, or genesis, is rare amongst weapons. It's also telling that the Fist feats are documented, not hypothetical. We have historical precedent for it granting life and altering the sky. Given Ra-Den's status as a Titan construct, The true upper limit of its power in mortal hands remains unknown, but even a fraction of its capability makes it one of the most potent environment-shaping artifacts in Azeroth's history. That's why it sits just above Ulthalesh. It can do everything a region-level destructive weapon can, but it can also perform Titan-like acts of creation, making its potential impact on the world's balance even greater. And at number 5, we have Sharas'dal, Scepter of Tides. This is an artifact of water, and in Warcraft lore, water has always been underestimated as a weapon. This scepter doesn't just move tides, it embodies the ocean's full, ungovernable force. In ancient times, it summoned a cataclysmic flood that wiped out coastlines and reshaped civilizations. But you don't even have to look that far back to see what kind of power this means. During the events of Mist of Pandaria, Jaina Proudmoore used her own magic to conjure a massive tidal wave that nearly obliterated Orgrimmar, and she did that without Sharas'dal. With it, a wielder isn't limited to a single city-level spell. They command the seas themselves. This means, in practical terms, Sharas'dal could do far more than drown a single harbor. Every major capital built on or near water, Stormwind, Borealis, Zandalar, Undercity before its fall, depends on predictable tides. A wielder with no restraint could erase half the great cities of Azeroth off the face of the map in one campaign. Instead of fighting armies, you collapse them under walls of water, sinking fleets before they launch, and wiping out infrastructure in hours. Even if the destruction isn't total, the economic and political fallout would be catastrophic. It's a weapon that destabilizes nations at the roots. The duality makes it even more dangerous. As a restoration artifact, it can heal and nurture, but that same control allows for cataclysmic flooding or redirection of oceans. Water is persistent. It carves canyons and swallows islands. Scaled to the artifact's full potential, Sharas'dal can drown continents and rewrite coastlines, doing in hours what normally takes nature millennia. That's why it sits above the Fist of Ra-den. Because it isn't just about summoning a storm, it's about wielding the planet's largest and most essential element as a weapon, with city-killing precedent already hinted at in its lore. And at number 4, we have Aluneth, Greatstaff of the Magna. Aluneth is not simply a staff of powerful spells. It contains a bound, sentient entity of raw, primordial, arcane energy. Something so potent that even Deadwind, one of the most accomplished guardians in history, could barely contain it. Her magical reserves were near titanic, and yet wielding Aluneth was a constant struggle. That alone tells us this is not a normal conduit. It's a bottle holding a storm that predates the ordered magic of the Titans themselves. Unchecked, the storm wouldn't behave like a bomb. It would destabilize the very rules governing magic, causing uncontrolled eruptions of arcane energy that tear the fabric of reality. Spells would backfire. Ley lines could rupture. The thin boundaries between planes might collapse. This is less about one cataclysmic moment and more about a cascading failure of reality wherever the staff is unleashed. It's a fundamentally different category of danger from Sharas'dal's floods or Ulthalesh's draining. It threatens the underlying operating system of the world rather than its surface features. We also know Aluneth's entity is conscious. It resents being bound and constantly tests its prison. This makes it unpredictable. The risk isn't just power, but loss of control, something even the most disciplined mage could struggle with. In lore terms, an uncontrolled Aluneth event could spread farther and last longer than any single spell, making regions permanently unstable for arcane practice, or even the basic laws of physics. Because of this, Aluneth sits high on this list, despite not having a single shattering world feat. It instead represents a sustained existential threat to reality's integrity. While Sharas'dal can drown continents and the Fist of Ra-den can create or destroy life, Aluneth could make the laws of magic themselves collapse, a danger on par with cosmic-level entities. And at number 3, we have Tuur, Beacon of the Naaru. Tuur stands out on this list because, unlike most of the artifacts here, it is primarily associated with healing and creation rather than destruction. Forged by the Naaru and imbued with the essence of the light itself, Tuur's feats go far beyond mending wounds. In the war against the Void, it once saved entire planets from annihilation at the hands of the Void Lord Dimensius. And this isn't even just a metaphor. Dimensius is a cosmic-scale entity whose assault can unmake worlds. and Tour intervened to stop that level of devastation. That feat alone puts it in the same class as weapons capable of planetary destruction, but as a force of preservation. The implication is staggering. If the light concentrated in Tour can restore or preserve worlds at that scale, then, if inverted or misused, that same energy could theoretically unravel or erase life on a similar magnitude. Its power is not in a single blast, but in the scope of what it touches, healing or rebuilding entire ecosystems, reversing extinction events, and countering void corruption on a planetary level. This places Tour above Aluneth. While the staff threatens to destabilize reality locally, Tour has demonstrated interplanetary impact. Another dimension of its danger is political. An artifact that can undo devastation can also determine the fate of civilizations. A wielder could choose which worlds survive and which perish, rewriting galactic history without firing a shot. That duality, saving or erasing on a cosmic scale, is why Tour ranks this high despite being holy. In terms of raw potential, it is every bit as consequential as a weapon of mass destruction, only wielded in reverse. And at number 2, we have Xal'atath, Blade of the Black Empire. Xal'atath is more than just a dagger. It's a prison for an ancient void entity, and that entity is no longer just whispering from the shadows. In the current World of Warcraft storyline, as making this video, the consciousness that once inhabited Xal'atath has emerged as a major antagonist, shaping events on a cosmic scale rather than lurking at the edge of them. That evolution changes how we judge the Blade's power. We're not only looking at a relic of the old gods, we're looking at a vessel that incubated a villain now threatening Azeroth directly. Even before its escape, the Blade's danger was its ability to corrupt and infiltrate. It doesn't need a giant spell or a direct strike. It seeps into minds, ecosystems, and even Titan constructs, bending them slowly towards the void. That's why the old gods nearly won. They work through patience and inevitability. Xal'atath channels that same methodology. In mortal hands, it's a whisperer and corrupter. In the hands of its own liberated entity, it's a living extension of the Black Empire's will. This makes it fundamentally different from the other artifacts on this list. The Scythe of Elune or Apocalypse can destabilize civilizations. Xal'atath carries an intelligence and a long-term plan. The current antagonist's rise out of the blade shows that it was never just a tool. It was a chrysalis. And if that entity still uses the blade as a conduit, the scale of its power rivals anything short of a titan. It's not a slow apocalypse anymore. It's an active, central force in Warcraft's narrative, steering the next great calamity. That's why it holds the second spot. Its danger is no longer hypothetical corruption, but a proven, evolving adversary whose influence could surpass even weapons that break worlds outright. And at number 1, we have the Scepter of Sargeras. The Scepter sits at number 1 because it has already accomplished the kind of feat other artifacts could only imply. When Naaru used it to open uncontrolled portals across Draenor, the resulting stress ripped the planet apart, leaving only the shattered fragments we now call Outland. This isn't a hypothetical or a story told in whispers. It's just canon. The Scepter directly caused planetary destruction through its manipulation of space and dimensional rifts. Its design is pure destructive leverage. While other artifacts might build armies, spread curses, or destabilize magic, the Scepter of Sargeras tears open reality itself. Each portal is a wound in space. Uncontrolled, they multiply and overlap, and rip at the world's structure until tectonics, atmosphere, and magic ley lines collapse. In effect, it weaponizes the world's own fabric against itself. No rebuilding, no recovery, just disintegration. Because it draws on the power of Sargeras, a titan, its upper limit is unknown. Draenor's destruction may not even represent its full capacity. In theory, it could be used on Azeroth or other worlds with even more catastrophic results. That makes it unique amongst Legion artifacts. Not only does it threaten planetary annihilation, it has already done it, something no other weapon on this list can claim. This demonstrated, verified feat of shattering a planet secures the Scepter's place at the top. Every artifact below it represents potential. The Scepter represents reality. It is the ultimate expression of destruction magic in Warcraft lore. A single instrument capable of ending not just civilizations, but the very ground they stand on.